Hey, what's up, beautiful world? I'm Joe. I'm here with Nichole.
Hey, guys.
We are Scalp Logic, and today we want to dig into the topic of the needles. The needles that are being used. What are the best needles? What's the history of the needles? I want to dig into that a little bit because I think to see what people are using today, it's good to look at the past and see kind of how we, the evolution of the needles. So, Nichole,
I like it.
you like that?
I like it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to let you start as always. I've been doing this for over a decade. You're just only a few years now coming in, but you mentioned something earlier before we started this video. I want you to go ahead and repeat that, please.
Yeah, so when I first started off, I thought that you had to have the best machine, whether it was the $3,000, $6, machine, that was going to be able to produce the results that I really wanted to produce. Naively though, now looking back, I completely realized that, although you want a good machine, really it's going to be the skill, the experience that the artist has. It's really not the machine.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's important to use the right machine,
yes,
the right needles.
Yes.
I think a better way, or maybe a more in-depth way to say the same thing you're saying is, a good machine is going to make your job easier.
Yes.
It's going to be more comfortable for the artist.
And for the hand,
but
for the longevity.
It's not necessarily going to make the treatment work any better. It'll be better as a result of the artist being comfortable, right?
Yes.
But it's not going to make anyone, if your skill level's here, a machine's not going to take you there, and the right needle's not going to take you there.
And I think marketing does a lot of that, where you'll think, okay, that machine is going to get
good.
me there.
And guys, listen to this. Yeah, let's dig in a little bit because it is important to find good needles.
Yes.
But I see a lot of people being ripped off because they're using the new, whatever, the hot, I don't want to use any names, but like the hot machine, the hot needles, the hot this, the hot this. And yeah, some of them are good. I'm not hating on all of it.
Or they're smooth, or they're small, and they're easier to use.
Sure.
That might be what it is. And it's not as loud as another machine might be.
Yeah.
But other than that,
but don't have the blinders on and think that's going to change it.
Yes.
You don't have to train. You don't have to get better. Like, oh, I got the right machine. Don't worry about it. I'm going to, So I use the analogy of like basketball shoes. I'm a big basketball fan. If I wear LeBron James's shoes or Michael Jordan's shoes, unfortunately, I don't play like these guys, so it's not going to make me any better, right? I'll look a little fresher. But okay, perfect. So in the industry, then, what people use are the single needle and the 3 needle.
yes.
And gosh, my whole career, I've been kind of, by myself against the whole group of people. And the whole group of people, probably 80%, 90% of the industry, they use a 3 needle.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think let's dig into what the 3 needle is.
Let me just use this little guy here. I use this to illustrate when I train people. So just real quick, just to make sure everything's really clear. Obviously, a single needle is pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
So as I'm puncturing a hole, right, in the skin, one single needle is making a hole or a well, whatever you call it, and ink is falling from that needle into that well, right?
So
and
a tiny impression is what it is.
Tiny impression, exactly. And now if you take the 3 needle, what we mean by 3 needle is it's actually 3 pins, probably about a third of the size of the single needle, right? If they're going to make the same size impressions. So each pin, rather, is going to be a third of the size of the single needle. So soldered together, and the impression is going to come right in the middle there. So as I'm poking the skin, again, I'm making a hole, making a well, and ink is falling from that needle into that well, right? So poking a hole, come out, and whatever's left from that 3. So a 3 needle is going to dig in. Yeah. Like, think about that. The single needle is almost like maybe like a butter knife.
Yeah.
Right? For some people. And that's where I lose
like
a lot
of... tiny prick is really what it is, as opposed to the 3, I would think of.
Well, in terms of cutting into the skin, this is almost, the single needle is almost like a butter knife. Whereas the 3 needle is just going to, like a bread knife, cutting bread, just made for it, right? To sink right in there.
Yes.
So that's, that's a good thing and a bad thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where I lose a lot of people in the single needle, is because it's so blunted and it's so hard to get ink into the skin. I think a lot of people say it, all you can get is very superficial results, and it looks flat. It looks insufficient.
Or it fades too quickly, and they're not really understanding that expertise and the level.
They don't understand our process. Exactly. And I don't want to get into our process and why I'm different. I'm just trying to explain the different needles and how you can. So essentially, it doesn't matter if you use a single or a 3. Is what I want you to pull away from this video. It doesn't matter if you're using a 5 needle, a 10 needle, a single needle. Getting the impressions there is getting the impressions there. But I've questioned my own confidence for 10 years. Is this the right way to do it? And I'm more confident. I'm more sure than ever that this guy is the right way to do it. I'm even getting artists to say that have been doing it for a while that have had some hate speech on my single needle in recent years. They're saying, oh yeah, on my second and third treatments now I do the single needle. And I'm like, huh. So again, it's all about, you can do the same work. And Nichole actually loves the 3-needle a lot more than me.
Yes.
And that's her tool of choice.
In certain regions, definitely. And it would be people that have tougher skin that I would be a little bit more quicker to draw the 3-needle. But for the most part, we both use the single, especially in the front area. That's where, you know, we're not just thinking right now, always thinking long-term game.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also something else I want to point out, when I say single needle, 3-needle, I have 4 different kinds of single needles that I use on any given client. I have a guy coming in a half hour here, and it wouldn't be rare if I use 3 different kinds of single needles.
Yes.
So when I say single needle, like Nichole just referenced, you know, different regions of the skin, different skin types, you know, the front and the back, the sides, there's just so many moving parts, even on different treatments. Like if I saw a gentleman today versus seeing him maybe in a couple of weeks, I might use completely different needle sets. So it's always, and again, this goes back to a machine's not going to make you good, a needle's not going to make you good, but experience is going to make you good.
Yes, it's being able to identify, okay, this single needle is really not necessarily working for this region or for this particular client. Let me switch it out. And it's really being able to gauge that right away on each client. That's where expertise comes in.
No, that's good. That's good. Let me just, I want to show something here. This is a needle bar, a long needle bar. Okay, nowadays, what everybody in the industry is using is a cartridge needle. Okay, this is kind of old school tattoo world. And I remember in my beginning days, we used to use the word tattoo, and not going to say any company names, but a lot of people were hating on us for using tattoo equipment in the first place. And again, the evolution of the industry, it was inevitable because we use the same equipment as a tattoo world. So in any event, just to give you a quick reference, and I can show a little video here, maybe we'll put on there, but you know, some needle bars. And what I'm getting at is, I used to buy loose pins and I used to solder these pins up and then solder them onto the needle bar. I don't know if you could see that. It's a little burnt. I did it on purpose so you can see.
Imagine having to do that before your client comes in.
It was a little bit different. I mean, yeah, obviously it'd be a day off and I'd just make, you know, 20 needles, 50 needles and, you know, autoclave them, cook them up, all that kind of stuff with the ultrasonic. So a lot of people in the industry now, they don't even know it's so much easier to just buy these needle cartridges, plug them into your pen machine, boop, and you're ready to go. But again, my point is, what's inside there? What's inside? I'm sorry, guys, I'm not really.
Is it focusing it?
There we go. That's good enough. Yeah, you see it going up and down there. Cool. So my point is, what's inside, you know, that steel? Whether it's 2 pins to make a point, whether it's 1 single pin or 3 pins. I think just understanding your tools is really important to understand your craft. So I don't want to get into necessarily... I don't want to get into. Do you want to reference some brand names? Because we get a lot of questions. I'm trying to in this one video here. I'm trying to knock out a lot of questions we've been hearing. I've always loved a company that in China actually, Easy Tattoo. That's one of my main providers that I like to use. I like one of their specific needles.
Yes.
And then I use a couple of American providers here, just tattoo supply houses. I like 4 different brands. That's why I don't think it's fair to mention 1 or 2.
And they're not always going to work for each client, like I said before. So you really have to understand what the needle's doing and what each person is going to require.
I'll say the gauge size though, because that's pretty important. I know the gauge size, if I was going to use a 3-needle, which again, I don't use a whole lot of, but I would use 0.20 or under. I would never use, 0.3, 0.4 for a 3-needle. It's just way too big of an impression. I mean, you could put 3 or 4 or 5 hair follicles in one of those impressions if you're using a 0.3 or 0.4 3-needle. And then, sounds contradictory, but for a single needle, I use 0.4 millimeters. So it's a pretty substantial gauge. It's hard to find, actually. Not a lot of tattoo manufacturers make that thick of a single needle gauge, but that's what I prefer myself.
I think we should talk about why we prefer that so much. I mean, really, let's talk about the healed for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, I like where you're going.
I think that a lot of people will see results on the internet and people will be boasting and being like, I did this with a 3 Apollo needle or whatever it is that they're
That's
using.
a really great point. Okay, cool. So staying on the topic, I love that. That's a really good point. You're right, because we hear it a lot.
Yes.
So why use this is a 3-needle with the black tape on it, right? Versus a single needle. We see a lot of fresh results on the internet. And a challenge I put out to anybody and ourselves, of course, first and foremost is, what does a 3-needle look like when it's healed?
Yes.
What do the impressions look like when the 3-needle heals? Because the argument against the single needle is, again, it looks flat. It's not substantial enough. It's not dark enough. It's not full enough. It's going to take way too long. Yes. Exactly. And so in contrast, they all recommend use a 3 needle. Okay,
it's
cool.
Quicker,
so you get the ink there, like I said earlier, it's like cut it, with a bread knife, right? You get the ink in a lot faster, but you're compromising the results. You're compromising the looks.
They look good right then and there, and they might look good for a little bit, but what we always talk about is long term.
It only looks good instantly. And now, again, if we're really going into this, anyone working on a demographic of Latin clients, of essentially thicker skin as we know it, right? Yeah. Maybe Middle Eastern skin, some Asian skin, especially darker toned. Thicker skin is going to hold ink a lot stronger. Yes. It's almost like, it's thicker. I don't want to go too far into it. But in any event, what I'm trying to say is it's a lot easier. A mediocre artist can make work look really great on skin like that versus working on Caucasian skin, let's say, for instance, right? It's going to be a little bit looser, especially in California with some sun damage. You have to be so much more careful
with your depth, definitely.
Much more careful.
Yep.
Much more careful with your depth.
You have to really be able to dial in and understand this person is fair skin, and the impressions are going to take a lot quicker. Not necessarily for everybody, but you have to really use common sense and your expertise when it comes to that.
Right. In other words, say that a different way. Let's profile one artist in particular, and they work mostly on Latin people, right? And so probably they work with a 3 needle because that's, like I said, what most people in the world use, okay? Translate that work onto looser skin, Caucasian skin, Asian skin, especially young, healthy, oily skin. Gosh, you're gonna ruin that. It's gonna look like a helmet head.
Yes.
This is to
maybe
me,
not right away. We should definitely highlight that.
This is true. This is true. There's different levels of ruining someone's head, right? Yes. It's subjective, and I'm not talking about like the blatant, like the picture on the internet that'll scare anyone. I'm talking about like the subtle one that looks maybe okay on the after result, the before and after, maybe even one that a company promoted, right? But nobody ever sees that guy healed, and as it said, or maybe after he had a couple more sessions.
Exactly.
And now he just has, eventually it's going to look, once you put too much ink there, and again, herein lies the problem of injecting so fast. Once you put too much ink on the scalp, it's game over. Laser removal is the only way to get, some of that inky look off of that guy's head.
And then imagine after those sessions how that's healing, what that's looking like. What is he living with it? Then he gets a little bit of sun. There's a lot of variables to keep in mind. There's
a lot going on, and as we keep saying, we're trying to play chess, not checkers. Yes. Like we're not trying to make the results just for today or next month. I'm trying to think about this gentleman 2 years from now, 4 years from now, because I'm starting
10 years from now.
We're starting to see these guys again, and it's really important to. I don't think anybody's talking about it in the industry. No. To me, this subject that we're talking about right now is putting a little bit too much ink in the skin today and not thinking about how much more ink it's just going to settle into the skin tomorrow and next year. This is what's making this whole industry idle.
Yeah.
This is why this industry won't grow. People go on Google and they see pictures like this and they're like, hey, I like the concept. It looks kind of cool, but it doesn't look natural. I'm not going to. And that's me. I'm the guy that's like, hey, I'll just go bald again if it doesn't look as natural as I know this can actually look. The problem is not everyone knows. The standards aren't where they should be.
No, they are not. And I don't want to get too off track, but I would say that, when you're going through hair loss and men are experiencing it, it's almost like they want to get the quickest Band-Aid and just kind of cover it as quickly as possible so that they're not dealing with what they're feeling inside.
That's true.
But
wow,
I would really,
good point.
Really say,
I like that.
I would really say think about it, though, because I know that right now you feel that. But think about if you just kind of take the slower approach, the more cautious approach, long term, you're going to be so much happier. That's a huge thing to highlight.
This is a conversation we have with almost all of our clients. This is why clients are flying out of state, isn't it? These are the guys that are saying, hey, I'm okay being bald another month, year, 6 months, however long it takes. It's not like these guys are happy to take forever to get their treatment done. Yeah. Obviously, as a business, we want to get it done as fast as possible. But what I'm saying is with confidence, after doing this for I second guessed myself for so long. When I learned in Florida. I learned there was one guy in Florida in the U.S. and there was one provider in the U.K.
That's crazy.
Right? And that's what I had to choose from. I lived in Pennsylvania and I had to choose between driving to Florida or flying to the U.K. Yeah. And money was a thing for me. I chose Florida. And, back in those days, my first 2.5 years doing this, we did one and done. Of course, not that many people were actually one and done. They would come back again. But as we advertised, the evolution,
evolution of that.
Anyone doing one and done, it's just so silly.
Yeah.
Past the needles, it dries skin. We
they
have
don't
guys
understand
exfoliate
skin,
sometimes
yeah.
for a week or two before they come, depending on their
Yes.
situation. Could you imagine like doing one session in some dry skin, sun damage? I mean,
that's where the desperation of hair loss really comes in, where you get sold on just come in and walk out with a hairline.
Yeah,
that's really where
it's
it
true.
comes, and that's who they target. I feel like, that's really good marketing and feeding on desperation.
I know it's who they target. I was that person. I am that demographic. Yeah, no, I know it. I know it. We see big companies coming in now.
Yes.
Back to the needle conversation. We see these big, huge hair loss companies coming in, and everyone in the SMP industry tried to call these big companies for years and years and years, right?
Yep.
And they used to hang up tattoo artists, click, 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 and now they're doing it. And of course, as their marketing is, they're the professionals, they're the pioneers of hair loss. And I'm like, and we've gotten some phone calls already, and it hurts my heart to know, man, guys they're believing it. Yeah, they're falling for the marketing. So. Let's stay on topic.
Yep.
That's important to us though, because
Yes.
we hear a lot of these phone calls. So
Yes.
Anyway, okay, cool. So to close with the needles, anything else you want to say about the needles? Anything that any insight people are missing maybe when they're looking for the top needle? Is there a favorite needle out there right now in the industry that you're hearing? Is there like one or two that everybody's using?
I've heard a lot of Artist Pro, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of Apollo.
I heard a lot of Bishop lately.
Yes,
which
that's
Bishop
true.
is manufactured out of California, out of Southern California. So in the industry, I was actually the first, in the SMP industry, I was the first artist to, how do I say it properly? To essentially notice Bishop and inquire. They used to call me the mad scientist. I used to just...
They used to.
when I was still in the high school. So I even still today, if I see a new needle that looks curious that I haven't seen before, I'm always looking for something new. I'm always trying to experiment on something different. I'm
always trying to raise the bar, always raising the bar for each and every person, I think, and you're definitely that person.
Just trying to get the product better, trying to get the treatment better. I mean, it's so cool to see the needles that we used to make and using the tattoo machine to, the ease of access with the pen machines. And gosh, I just know. So I was so blind in my beginning days, injecting ink into the skin. And I understand that, gosh, a lot of this industry is still blind, injecting ink into scalps. And I'm doing my best on YouTube to try to help people understand.
Yeah,
and
definitely. And I would say, to your point, for many years you second guessing yourself. Now when we see the clients come in from New York, from Arizona, and I'm talking about clients that he worked on years and years ago, and we're seeing the results, and we're like, wow, like that's like a testament to know, like, man, I've been doing it the right way.
Single needle was the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's really
Again,
cool
more and more
see,
confidence. More and more confidence.
When you have a guy that comes in and he, either he's stopping by to say hi or he wants to adjust something on the hairline, and Joe did him 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and you see the impressions, I'm like, whoa. It's a testament to, we may take a bit longer, but I know when this client leaves with integrity, they're going to be walking around and they're going to be really happy with what they have.
Yeah, no, and that's our journey right now as far as the needles go. I understand what we're preaching.
Yes.
It takes so much more work, so much more labor. I know there's guys that just started doing this a year ago, and they're doing heads twice as fast as I am, and half as many sessions. Think about that. Yeah. That's like a difference of 12 hours, 15 hours. That's a huge difference of someone who's supposed to be so experienced. So we understand what's at stake. And again, I maintain saying that the best way, if you want the world's best results, it's a single needle. That's it.
I agree.
Cool. Be blessed, everybody. Thanks for watching. And as always, if you have any comments, suggestions, please comment below. We'd love to hear from you.
Want to see.
Cheers, guys.